The FID, ladies and gentlemen, is marking, as I said, the critical point in capital projects. If I look into the project pipeline globally, regularly monitored by different institutions, we see actually 300 gigawatt of planned hydrogen production capacity in the books, 300 gigawatt, quite a remarkable number. And we already hear, and we just heard it also from the commissioner, that key customer segments are ramping up to make use of these gigantic facilities that are in the pipeline. So we hear about major projects in refineries. Just heard about steel mills, very much in the focus here in Germany. Power plants, we have the outline of a power plant strategy here in Germany since 2 weeks, focusing on hydrogen-ready power plants. We see many projects focusing on decentralized fuel cells and filling stations and so on. So there's a lot of activities going on. I was quite impressed to hear the number of 132 projects that are in the pipeline in Brussels. So this is looking good. And also if I look at the German figures, at the German project pipeline for electrolyzers, we have a bright outlook. 22, we were talking about 5.6 gigawatts of projects in the pipeline. Now we see the pipeline filled up to 8.7 gigawatt in the year 23. So we see that things are happening, that many people are working on projects to be planned. And from what we can tell, the strategic outlook, the strategic goal of 10 gigawatt by 2030, we're only a couple of 100 megawatt short, at least if I look at the planning. And this is where planning hits reality. The reality check is actually last year, the electrolyzer capacity, according to analysis by the University of Cologne, has slightly decreased from 65 to 62 megawatt. So we are actually far away from a 10 gigawatt target. So there's a lot of room for investment decisions. We have heard not too promising messages, for instance, coming from project in Heide, Westküste 100, where a 30 megawatt electrolyzer project was cancelled due to cost concerns. We hear that from projects that there are high acquisition costs without real cost reduction happening, at least that's what we hear from projects. We still are talking about technical challenges such as performance guarantees and other things making a business case viable. And of course, we still have quite extensive regulatory uncertainties. Things like the discussions around CO2 quota trading, around RED III and such like. And I think this is something also many projects can share with us here. We hear from the individual projects that we have quite a few permitting issues dealing with the local authorities where things don't happen like we would like to see them coming up. So if we look at this broad picture, we have a greatly filled pipeline. We have quite a few challenges. Before we start the discussion with our panelists, I would like to start the discussion with you, dear audience. We have prepared 2 questions during our discussion that you can take part in using this Slido tool. The first question is one that I would like to ask in the beginning to shape a little bit our discussion here. So where do you see, and I think you are quite familiar with the Slido app, so you can join it using hashtag H2Forum24. The first question I'd like to ask you is, where do you see the biggest challenges taking final investment decisions in hydrogen projects? And usually, if you look at FID, you are looking at these 3 pillars. You look at financial feasibility, you look at permitting, and you look at technical feasibility. Maybe there are some other ideas, but everything, of course, also accumulates in the question, do we have financial feasibility? Is there bankability around it? And we already see a clear trend, 80 participants, 85, 90 participants. So I dare to take a guess what the outcome is of this poll, but please feel free to make your individual voice heard. So financial feasibility seems to be the key aspect, and to be honest, this is not a big surprise because everything accumulates at the end, Christian, in the question: is it financeable? Is it feasible from the perspective of an investor, and of course also the banks? Christian, you are the CTO of Smart Energy. You have a long pedigree in the field of introducing innovative technologies in PV, in renewable energy, in the area of transport. And you started the hydrogen activities 2020 with Smart Energy from the perspective of a company that is investing in projects. And so you have a regular experience with taking projects from the stage of its infancies to a final investment decision. So we have seen, as I mentioned, some FIDs being delayed in the recent years. What makes you so optimistic? That's what you told me in the discussion up front, that we will see a breakthrough this year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you for the introduction, and I'm very pleased to be here again. In fact, if I look a bit back and the direction of this question right now, I'm a physicist also. Maybe I usually don't mention it too much as I've been in business most of my life, but I always went into innovative technologies, and the one was semiconductors. I did 15 years of semiconductors, and I remember when Europe wanted to catch up with the mega bit projects, and then going up in the densities. And it was initially a very good approach. However, what Europe lacked was industrial policy, really, where the various member states realized that this is an important fact, an important ingredient of all our technology, and they all work together. So there was little fights back and forth, France, Germany, etc., which we even see today in energy, which kind of slowed down the joint approach. So in the end, I'm not saying we don't have semiconductor industry in Europe, but some key elements and the level of production we have in Europe is still scaring. That's one thing, and we are trying to catch up. There are new programs, attracting investments into Europe now at much higher price, while we had the technology here already earlier. The next phase of my life was quite a lot into, in fact, renewables, solar projects. And we had the same situation with solar, as I'm repeating, obviously, which many of you know, was about bankability of PV back in the early 2010, 9, 8, the bigger projects coming, and that's when I first joined also Smart Energy into 2012 after 2 other PV companies. The question is, well, I cannot invest, that's not bankable, yeah, because we didn't have the 10-year, 15 years experience, and luckily our CEO at that time said, I don't care about bankability, just put down the money if you want to do it. And in fact, luckily, we had at that time some people with this entrepreneurship and some groups which at that time made the largest projects in Spain at that time, for example, which we did back in 2011, 12, 13. So somehow the bankability is something which, and we come to the finance, somehow you don't have it in the beginning. There's a big opportunity, and somehow somebody has to make a risk-taking somehow. There needs to be support, but also an entrepreneurship and also a joint approach. And now, finally, coming to the hydrogen, which in fact, end of 2019, when the IPCEI came up in 2020 January, we took the decision in Smart Energy. That's the next big thing. Okay, what makes us optimistic? Well, the thing is, we have seen delays, and I'm not surprised at all that there were delays, because you have always this curve of excitement, and then you come to reality. But we already come through this valley of reality, where people realize, okay, it's not that easy, true, but it will come. And so the optimistic thing is we have industries which already by now, by the projection by now, even without subsidies, will make sense. And luckily, unluckily, it's actually not the project we are doing right now. It's more the ones which are the refinery, those who do today hydrogen consumptions. Those have a real strong incentive because they have regulation which imposes to do, and the willingness to pay is much higher. So I will come back to that maybe later. But also there's other elements which need more support. So I see two sides. The one, there is projects which are obvious, others which need more support.
But just to dive a little bit deeper, where do you see in terms of regulatory aspects, where do you see the biggest challenges?
Mm-hmm. So the good news, like Kadri Simson just said, finally, after 2-3 years, we have really clarity on most critical items. So on the regulation side, as we saw also on the poll, it's not anymore the major obstacle. There is the good approach that there is targets, there is certain industries binding targets which for Europe at least make a market. Mm-hmm. However, on the other ones which are not regulated, it's purely the ETS system which is in place, the emission trading system, the CO2 pricing. And if you look there into the future, there is, how can I say, a lack of incentive from regulation, from decarbonization perspective to really engage into new applications for hydrogen. So the target for Europe, which is this 10 million tons, in a way is missing important parts if we don't care also for those applications which really need innovation, which need new furnaces, new processes to be installed.
Trading schemes, ETS, something to take away? And
yeah.
Okay. Yeah, let's take that to the regulator. Philipp, I'm very happy to have you here, coming from the Ministry of Energy and Climate. You have been very active in the recent years, not only securing the energy supply to Germany, but also in paving the way to convert our energy system so that hydrogen is not utopia anymore. We are working on it, and Kadri Simson just mentioned it. To me personally, the decision that was taken last year to develop a core grid in Germany was a true milestone, a trigger point that actually radiated not only into the hydrogen community here in Germany, but really had an impact on the international perception that hydrogen is bound to come. What else do you see as important projects that you have developed in the recent years, and what's still in the pipeline?
Yes, thank you very much, and also again, thanks for inviting me, for inviting the ministry here. Yes, you're mentioning the core network. I think indeed this is one of the major achievements that from the political side we arrived at over the last years. But I would also like to take you even further back than 2023 to 2019, when we adopted for the first time the National Hydrogen Strategy. And back then, we were just talking about that, back then we started more or less from scratch. So we started with a blank piece of paper, at least when it comes to the energy and the industry side, and try to think of why and how and in what sense would we need hydrogen in the future in order to decarbonize. And back then, we're still talking about much less ambitious climate protection targets. So they also have changed in the meantime. And if you remember those 3.5 years back, I think the situation was completely different. There was no money, there was no regulation at all. There was, at least from the political point of view, not a real understanding that hydrogen will play a pivotal role in future energy policy. And if you think of what has happened in these 3.5 years, I think we can say from the government side, as well as Kadri Simson from the European side, a lot has happened. From on the regulation side, we have more clarity on how the future pipeline infrastructure will look like. We have clarity on what do we mean when we talk about green hydrogen. We have clarity about subsidies, about financing products from the government side. So a lot of things are actually in place right now. And this is also what is striking when you saw the poll that we had at the beginning. The regulatory side, the technical side is not the issue anymore. Obviously, there are still things to be cleared off, to be regulated. We're waiting the delegated act on low carbon hydrogen in the next month. So there are still open questions. We still don't have on the national side the clarity on green hydrogen. The regulation that is due to be adopted is on the way, but everyone in the room has a pretty good understanding of what the government expect the future hydrogen market to look like. And now it really comes down to what will the market make of it. We have put plenty of billions of euros on the table from the government side. You mentioned the IPCEI projects. We have other with climate contracts for difference. We have the strategy for the power plants, for the transformation of the power plants. So a lot of public money is already awaiting to be put out into the market, but we still have the feeling that all of this is still not enough. So I think this is the question that is also very interesting for us to discuss here. What more is needed? What more clarity is needed in order to lower this on the poll and lower this huge amount of people who are saying on the financial side there is not enough clarity. And I think this is something that we're really looking forward into the future. But looking back, I think a lot of has been put in place, and I think this is a good starting point for 24 to really use these efforts that we have already made and hopefully come to some more final investment decisions in this year.
So we take away a lot of seed financing has been done, and key decisions like the infrastructure has been taken. But now the focus, and this is being reflected in a couple of questions that I see here on the Slido monitor. Now we have to focus also on regulation that doesn't cost money but changes the market in some way, like the RED III targets or other quota instruments. So this is probably the task that lies ahead of us here in Berlin, but also in Brussels. But before we switch to Brussels, Armin, what is your take on the current state of investments in projects? You have a very long pedigree in the industry, large corporations now, smaller, more nimble and agile corporations. What was the latest investment decision you have taken?
Thanks a lot. I mean, it's not us taking investment decisions. Of course, it's the portfolio companies we are investing in. And let me maybe start on what has been said so far on the hydrogen economy. I mean, it is extremely important that firstly we need to be aware that the hydrogen economy will come, which is important, and secondly that we are in a situation coming from a hype, and now we would like to say it's more or less coming down to earth. For others, it's maybe saying valley of death situation for some project developers and manufacturers, of course. We need to go through that, which is important. And I mean, seeing here that investors like us as FiveT, who invested together with Armin in a fund and limited partners, 2 years ago, we closed the fund on clean hydrogen infrastructure projects of 2 billion. And this is exactly why we believe, or we did it, why we believe in the market. And we do take the risk to invest in first of its kind technologies and projects. And this is a little bit difficult. And so it's not waiting for, as it is mentioned here, taxpayers' money, definitely not. But since we believe in the hydrogen economy, it is important that you take a certain risk and that you are aware that the first of its kind risk on technology, but also on prices for PPAs or for renewable energy sources have developed drastically, unfortunately not as promised and expected. I mean, looking back 2.5 years, then nice prices for renewable electricity were down to €10 or US dollar per megawatt hour. which was more or less dreaming, and now we need to come back to reality. Even 40 or 50 megawatt euro per megawatt hour today is a good price. And the same happens on the cost for electrolyzer plants, for instance. I mean, everybody was dreaming, and this, to be frank, did not help. So the situation we are in today is we do invest in double-digit megawatt project to start with, but we also have a couple of investments ongoing on the FiveT side in even double-digit gigawatt project.
Wind and particular solar have shown a massive cost regression over the last 2 decades, and that was fueling, I think, the global growth of renewables in all sectors. Do we see a similar cost regression already in the hydrogen field? Is that sufficient? Is that fueling the development in this area?
We will see. For the time being, we see an increase. I mean, increase coming from theoretical values, I mean, down to, say, $300 per, say, kilowatt installed for a plant, which is a fantastic figure, would be nice, but it will not materialize. Today, we are more in the range of, say, $1,500 to $2,500 US dollars per kilowatt installed power to X plants or electrolyzer plants. The cost regression will come. Right now, we are in a situation that we need to, I mean, make sure that the technology will have, say, electrolyzers and compressors, will have a TRL, technical readiness level, which is reaching a level 8, 9, which is good, and then we scale up. Otherwise, what will happen, we scale issues or challenges, and this is the worst thing we can do. So it will come down, but I don't think that it will be below 1,000 euro or US dollar per kilowatt soon, on a plant side, so not the electrolyzer system only.
Switching to Brussels, the second pillar of regulation and defining aspect of the hydrogen business. Tatiana, your commissioner just has elaborated on the progress that we've seen on the regulatory field in Brussels. She was also mentioning the trailblazing activities here in Germany. How important, from your perspective, are the activities here in Germany, looking at it from a European perspective, but also maybe from a global perspective?
Well, I mean, I think that Germany has taken the lead in many aspects concerning the hydrogen market, and we are sure that it will continue playing a very big role. For instance, Germany has adopted important measures, as the colleague from the ministerium has pointed out, to have first a strategy on hydrogen. So they came up with a strategy in 2019. We came with our own strategy at EU level 1 year later, at 2020. So in a way, they already started with having this vision when the hydrogen market was nowhere and it didn't exist at all. They also have come up with programs to help also filling the financing gap that we have for the moment in hydrogen. For instance, we have very much looked at and cooperated with Hydrogen Global and with the ministerium to develop our own European Hydrogen Bank. Germany has, as my commissioner I think has mentioned in the speech, has also cooperated in the first auction that we launched last year, contributing with 350 million. We continue cooperating a lot together, and I think that it is to some extent very normal, because Germany has, one of the most industrialized economies in the EU. There is a lot that would need to be done to decarbonize both the energy system but also the industrial system. A lot of hard to abate sectors are established in Germany. So it's something where we see that Germany has an interest, also because many companies, like I'm talking like the Thyssen Group or others, are German and working on the hydrogen market, either building electrolyzers and selling them, or other types of components. So certainly Germany will continue playing a very important part in the EU spectrum, but also globally.
She also mentioned the European Hydrogen Bank, and there we have a quite interesting concept already in place here in Germany, H2 Global. Markus Exenberger, what is your connection to the Hydrogen Bank, and what is your vision on inspiring possibly the regulation in Brussels?
First of all, thank you very much for having me here today at the conference. You mentioned it already in the beginning, so I'm a victim now of a flight cancellation, so that was the reason why I couldn't manage to come to Berlin. H2 Global is, and that was an initiative by Kadri, Simson and by Minister Habeck last year, is responsible or is supporting the imports to Europe because it will be part of the hydrogen, the European Hydrogen Bank. It is, let's say, responsible for at least parts of the so-called international leg 2 for these European Hydrogen Bank. I would like to mention one other point, if you allow me. Armin mentioned that the prices are most probably much higher than expected. I would add some other thing. What I think what is very important now. We are always talking about market ramp up. First of all, we have to create a market. There is no market for green hydrogen or green hydrogen derivatives because there are also no price signals. So when you're talking about a market, you need to have a security or at least a clear picture. What is the price for the production? What is the price for the demand side? So this is what we really need to deliver right now. And this is what we need as soon as possible to make sure that the producer might have a clear picture what he can achieve on the market, that an off-taker knows what he needs to invest or what will be the price now to invest in new machineries or something like that. What we need as well is more speed. You mentioned that the German government they started very early with a national hydrogen strategy. They started very early now with stimulation projects like H2 Global, like the Klimaschutzverträge, like the IPCEIs. All that is very important and is necessary. But what we need now as well, beside that, is I would say more cooperation between countries within Europe. For example, the government from the Netherlands decided to use H2 Global as an instrument. They are doing that now jointly with the German government. So what we are doing right now there is organizing a next auction, a so-called joint contribution auction. So governments want to do the same, doing some kind of demand pooling. I think all these things are really necessary now to gain speed. Based to your question, coming back to your questions regarding regulation, I think many things are really done now by the European Commission, by the German government, and other governments in Europe. So this is a very, very important step forward now. What we need to do and what we need to see now is how that will look like after whatever the first contracts are signed. Is the regulation ambitious? Is it over-ambitious? Is it really straight to the point? Is it something what the industry can deliver now in a really short period of time? This is now something we need to learn, we need to experience now, we need to discuss with the European Commission and with the German government now in the future.
Just let me ask a very particular question on H2 Global. The idea, of course, is this double auction mechanism, which brings together the suppliers of hydrogen and the off-takers. We haven't seen too many closings yet, to be polite. What do you hear from the different players in the field, which is hindering them to use this instrument and really create a closing here?
No, there is no hindering. So what we are doing right now is we are finalizing the first round of auctions. 900 million euro are provided by the German government. And what we experienced within the last couple of months was that the industry always asked for time extensions now because they are not as ready as we thought. And but within the next couple of weeks, we will finalize all auctions. Then we will publish the prices and the contracts. Then the final contracts then will be signed. So this is, and that was as well mentioned by Philipp in the beginning. So the market is not as ready as we thought 2 years ago. So it will take a little bit longer. The prices are higher than expected, but this is, I would say, not the normal procedure, no, but it happens. The German government provided another 3.53 billion euros to H2 Global. So that means after now finalizing the first round of auctions, we will start directly now with an auction design for the next round of auctions. They will, the procedure for the next round of auctions will start immediately. So that is now as well, we will gain momentum there. We will speed up and we will try to do our best now to start as possible with the next round of auctions. But what we need is price signals, and we need as much as we can. So that's the reason why I would say that it is so important now not to stop, really to do it continuously, because these price signals are as well important for all other projects, like, for example, the Klimaschutzverträge. They need reference prices. The IPCEIs, they need references, and so on. So we need the transparency into the market.
Tatiana, I would like to take this question back to you. Markus mentioned a stronger emphasis on coordinating the national activities. You mentioned the cooperation between the Netherlands and Germany. What is the Commission doing to promote this coordination of the member states with the vision of creating a hydrogen union?
Well, I mean, the Hydrogen Global is an example in Germany at EU level. As Markus said, well, Hydrogen Global is bound to be part also of the broader concept of the European Hydrogen Bank. And there again, where we are trying is to provide, we call it auction as a service. So we basically put some European money from the European budget to bridge the difference between the cost of producing the price of hydrogen and the price of conventional hydrogen being made with fossil fuels, and by this means we try to, as he said, Markus, give price signals about what the prices in hydrogen are, and giving incentives to the off-takers to buy green hydrogen instead of buying fossil fuel based. Within the European Hydrogen Bank, the idea is obviously to have part of the money, the bulk of the money would be European for the time being. We have already gone for, as the Commissioner said, for a first auction with 800 million euros, to which it was added 350 from Germany. The idea is that in the next auctions, for which we have already 2.2 billion already committed for this year, we will have also participation from other member states who want to join also and contribute, to also be able to organize auctions not just for domestic hydrogen producers, which was the focus of the first auction that we did in November, but also to extend to the foreign producers outside the EU. We think that the European Hydrogen Bank is a way of really cooperating and putting together finance from the different countries to achieve the same objective, which is indeed to have an industrial scale amount of hydrogen projects that, for the time being, we see that there are many announcements, but we still need to do the next step, which is going into concrete.
Mm-hmm. Before we enter a further round, I would like to ask you, and we have prepared a little poll also on this one, what do you think about the regulatory framework that we should focus? The Next question of the upcoming Slido poll is, what do you think is the best regulatory strategy to stimulate the hydrogen economy? Is it subsidizing the H2 demand? Is it the production of, building the infrastructure such as the core grid? So is it a pull? Is it a push? In the US, for instance, we see with the Inflation Reduction Act a very strong focus on tax incentives of production. The European take is more on subsidizing the demand and, of course, focusing on infrastructure. So it's interesting to hear what you think, what the right strategy is. And I don't want to...
May I?
Jumpstart conclusions. I'm not sure if you're seeing the poll developing on our screen here, but the audience, more than half of the participants, well, almost the half, figures are still changing, are telling us building infrastructure is the key aspect. So we seem to be on the right track to developing the core grid, and European network. Also subsidizing demand is interesting. It's a close race with the subsidizing of production as we see it in the US. Creating marketplaces, interestingly, is not seen too important. What is your take on it, Christian?
Yeah, first of all, to create the infrastructure is something which I fully agree on. First of all, to say on the subsidies, if you look into 10 million tons, which is the domestic target, you need some 400 or something billion to investors. We talk about financial investment decision here. So we talk about a huge number. If we assume that Europe overall can maybe mobilize 100 billion or something, which would be already great, you see that already 300 are missing, and if you add the renewables on top, which is another 250 or something, so we are missing by a factor of 5 or 6 by 2030 the money which subsidies could help to do. So somehow we need a mechanism, a marketplace, which by itself works. Otherwise we will not get there. We need some lighthouse projects initially, that's no doubt. So now sharing a bit of an insight, because we heard a lot about from Markus also on the price signals from the demand side. So if you do some calculations on this topic and you realize, okay, we have on the one hand side a voluntary market, a voluntary demand for people who really also by marketing reasons and others need to move first. That's a one thing, but a very small volume. The next higher volume is in fact the regulatory one, which is the, let's call it the 42% in industry, which uses already hydrogen by 2030 to use, or the 1.2% in the e-kerosene, or the 1% in the transport. So this translates, if you look into it, what are they ready to pay? If you calculate the various mechanisms, also the penalties, and make assumptions, you come in fact in the end now to something which is on a 5 to even 8, 9 in the shipping industry, euro per kilogram. So this matches roughly what can be done as a cost of production. So that's my optimism, because I say there a marketplace, back to marketplace, can develop by itself, where somehow without subsidies, somehow there is a match on a level which by 2030 is not that high.
If I understand you correctly, you say this is normal procedure that we have marketplaces and this will naturally evolve.
Can evolve. In fact, the infrastructure is needed then to bring things together, because the auctions today, maybe this is the other point, favor a bit the local established users of hydrogen, which is good because it's the lowest hanging fruit, but it doesn't support too much the building of a larger infrastructure across Europe. So this is by regulatory incentives and by policy done, but I think from the market side, the design of this support should incentivize even more, also by market inputs, that this infrastructure across Europe and also coming from outside Europe is given. And just to say a last comment on this price signals, we may miss quite a lot, 25 to 30% of this 10 million target, if we don't take into account also the industries which are not today using hydrogen. And so let's say call it the industrial heating, power generation, even the building heating, which is a strongly debated thing, but we have buildings, we need to accept that, which cannot go electric, etc. So if you look at those and you look into the willingness to pay here, you come to a completely other figure. If you calculate the 40 euro per megawatt hour in electricity, you calculate a CO2 price of 170 or something per ton. In the end, you come up that they can pay roughly 2 euro and not more. For now. And if you wait until 2030, you will miss 25% of the 10 million ton target. And suddenly we will see, oh, strange, we only did refineries and some chemical industries and nothing else, and some steel, obviously, as well. So there is, I think, a bit more a diversified approach needed to really hit the target, and also making investment windows, for example, in the H2 auction, that you really, by application, realize you need to target different industries differently and make marketplaces in each of one of those separately.
Armin, our audience, of course, is always right, but do you concur with these results?
Yes and no. I mean, you need both. You need, of course, first of all, to stimulate the demand. So you need quota, you need targets, and to build infrastructure. If you build infrastructure without quota and fixed demand, the infrastructure won't be used. Just have a look on the hydrogen backbone, talking about using hydrogen in the mobility sector. You need, of course, hydrogen refueling stations and so on. So it's not a one-fits-all solution, I would say. The most important thing is clear market conditions. So trigger the demand, and the market will decide on the rest, on competitiveness, on import, on what to produce, if it is hydrogen or nitrogen, say not nitrogen, ammonia or methanol or liquid hydrogen or whatever. Important is you stimulate the demand, and the rest, besides very special infrastructure, maybe regulated asset bases, will decide on the market. This is what we believe on.
Philipp, if you look at the poll, you can be quite motivated. You're obviously following the right strategy. We have the core grid. You are subsidizing demand drivers in key industries, the steel industry. We are talking about power plants. We're talking about refineries. So generally speaking, we seem to be on the right track. But you're also saying there's something still lacking, obviously. This is also, and I would like to take your questions also into account. You've received quite a few questions on individual strategies happening here in Germany. So what is your take on the missing links, particularly in the area of refineries? RED III quotas is one issue. What has to be done there?
Yes, thank you. Well, first of all, I agree with lots of things that you already said, so I try to make it short. And another thing is that, like you said, Armin, it would have been interesting to see the answers if another question actually on the quota would have been included here for the audience. So this is something that I find is missing here.
It's other. Let's take it. That's other.
I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know.
Reacting with the poll now.
Especially looking at the options that, as a government or as a society, we do have when it comes to the financial amounts that we do have. Christian, you mentioned the limits that we have there on this regard. So yes, it makes me feel optimistic that we are in a certain way on the right track. Looking back again, I would have loved, like many of you in the room, that we would have gained much more experience with regard to IPCEI. So many of the things that we try to make happen, taking into account that there is no market for hydrogen at all layers of the market, were meant to be played out with the IPCEI, so that we, from the production side, over the infrastructure up to the offtake, we will create some core elements of the market and then see how it works. Anyway, we're starting there now. We have last week we have seen the final improvements for the latest IPCEI wave, so this is very important. And another element that maybe for you in this room, because my understanding there are not so many off-takers here in the room, but if you look at the offtake market, obviously imports do play a major role, at least in the German market. And I think there's something where we really need to make a big step forward. And infrastructure here is one very, very important element. We need to have more clarity on how the European infrastructure and where the European infrastructure will evolve. We are from the government side, we are in very close talks with many partners, especially in Europe when it comes to pipeline-based imports. So this is something I think where we really can make a difference in the next months to come. And obviously with regard to quota, RED III quota, that was one of the questions for this year. Yeah, so this is also something that we are taking a close look at. There is a difference between the RED III quota for industry and the quota for transportation, where you have penalties, which is put down on the individual market players. With regard to the RED III quota, we do not have this obligation from the European point of view. So we, as the national member states, we have to take the decision, will we do the same as we did in the transport sector, or will we keep the quota on the government level and with other means incentivize that industry will reach these 42% targets. And as of now, this is the direction we are thinking of right now, so that the government will take the burden and will take additional steps apart from all these instruments that are already in place to reach the target.
Philipp, also quite a few questions were related to the recently published power plant strategy or Kraftwerkstrategie. And this is also related to a sector that Christian has mentioned, the heating sector. 20% of our electricity production is linked to heating production. CHP is linking these two sectors. So indeed, it is not a wise way to separate these areas. We have to talk about it integratively. Can you share some insights, further details on the Kraftwerkstrategie with us?
Well, first of all, I'm very happy that we do have clarity on the strategy as of now. And for me, coming from the hydrogen part of the government, it's first of all a very good incentive for the further creation of the market. And also with regard to, well, to volumes, and also with regard to not green hydrogen. We will need in the next years also volumes of low carbon hydrogen in order to really ramp up the market. And in my view, the Kraftwerkstrategie is a very important tool for that. We're in close talks with Norway.
But when you say we have now clarity, you obviously seem to know more than the press release that we've seen 2 weeks ago, because we have to say there's not a clear clarity yet there, is it?
Well, we do have clarity on the gigawatts that we are trying to reach. We have clarity that by 2035 we will see a significant switch from gas to hydrogen. And I have to say, I'm not an expert on the power plant strategy, so I understand that you're pressing me, but don't press me too hard. Okay, I don't know much more details.
But the message came across, that's important. So we certainly need some further details so that the project can be calculated and things can be developed. But indeed, it's good to see that we have further activities in the making. That's important to develop it. Tatiana, also your take on the poll. We have seen a clear support for the strategy that we're taking here in Europe, focusing on infrastructure, focusing on demand driver. However, we always have to discuss this as an element of also a market competition with the US, which is taking a different approach. They are incentivizing, subsidizing the production of hydrogen. So what is your take on what we see as a poll result here? Are you also do you feel the support from the industry coming for this strategy?
Well, what I see from this, the result of this poll is that, I mean, I see it in a very positive way, because if we are just focusing on building infrastructure, it means that one of the things that where the EU can do more and where it can have a bigger added value, which is, you know, cooperation between the different member states in order to have cross-border hydrogen corridors, is one of the things where the market, the industry thinks that it's really important and is still missing. We absolutely think that hydrogen infrastructure and having a European hydrogen backbone is an enabling factor for the development of a European hydrogen market. So it's very, very important. We absolutely agree. And despite the fact, and I would say because these infrastructures take so long to develop, because the long permitting and studying that you need, the procurement of the different materials, the building, the different agreements that the different member states have to agree with, and so on and so forth, it's important that we start very early, even well before the hydrogen market has fully emerged and fully, has become a fully fledged market where you have hydrogen flowing freely across the borders of the EU. I think we have given quite a lot of clarity already last year when we have adopted the list of Connecting Europe Facilities projects, hydrogen projects, which has already signaled to the market where the corridors, the big hydrogen corridors that are going to cross the EU are going to take place. We have a northern corridor coming from the North Sea. We have a corridor coming from, the north of Africa via the Iberian Peninsula, France, up to Germany and even the Netherlands. We have another one coming from north of Africa through Italy. And in the future, we also want to have a corridor also coming from Ukraine. So I think it's already giving a very important signal of where we think the priorities regarding hydrogen infrastructure would be. This will give clarity also to the project developers as to, and also the off-takers, where they will have access to the future hydrogen network. And these projects will also be able to compete for money from the Connecting Europe Facilities. All these PCI projects will be able to have access to this financing and over time, to be built. Another important development, I think, concerning infrastructure is what happened just a couple of weeks ago, which was that the European Parliament and the Council, they agreed on the final text of the Net Zero Industrial Act regulation. Because in that regulation, it says very clearly that hydrogen and hydrogen infrastructure, they are considered as net zero energy, and they will have a preferential treatment as regards, fast permitting, for instance, including, also electrolyzers. So this is really, really important to speed up the development of the infrastructure we need, which is really a missing link, and without which I can see that the hydrogen market would not develop, as broadly as we expect in Europe. So we really need to put now the focus on infrastructure, and I think it's good that we converge also in that room, in the conference room, about it.
Thank you. Before I ask our industrial experts to close this with a statement on what they wish to happen this year, final question to Markus on international trade, also looking at what we see on a global scale. H2 Global, as the name says, is aiming at importing H2 globally. So you are aware of these individual national subsidy schemes, and how do you create a marketplace here? How do you deal with different certification schemes worldwide, with different subsidies worldwide, so that they are compatible with our schemes here?
Well, I think
that's to Markus.
Sorry. Markus is very close to market. That's why.
Exactly.
Yeah, I will try to do so. So yeah, like you said, there are different schemes on the market. What we are doing right now is, first of all, the auctions for Germany, for Europe, and in that particular regard, we are just dealing with one regime of regulation. And like I said in the beginning, so we started with 3 rounds of auctions: ammonia, methanol and synthetic air fuels. And what we are facing right now out of these auctions, or the outcomes of the first auctions, is that, let's say, for example, for the synthetic fuels, the regime of regulation is very, very ambitious. So this is something what I mentioned that before. This is something what we at least have to take into consideration, because we are competing on global market. And we signed 2 weeks ago a cooperation agreements with Japan. We are in very close negotiation now with Korea, because they want to have as well as support in developing, let's say, structures or supporting instruments for their own demand markets. So what we have to take into consideration, we in Germany, we in Europe, we are part of a global competition, and we have partly, I think, we have to ease at least, or to make sure that we can really succeed on these global competition. Because what we are facing now in the near future, for sure, is there is just a limited amount of hydrogen what will be traded worldwide, and there will be a price competition within different regions in the world. Nevertheless, I think another important thing now is to cooperate in Europe more closely. Tatiana mentioned it already. There are a lot of things, let's say, already developed, already taking place. But I'm quite sure that we have to force and to develop more cooperations globally with markets we want to cooperate with. The US market, for example, will be most probably one of the biggest exporter now for hydrogen, for blue, and most probably in the near future as well for green, and with other demand sectors like Asia, like Japan. We have to deal, let's say, with
Markus,
their approach.
unfortunately, you do not see the clock that is ticking in front of me.
No, then please.
Thanks for these insights, and we want to use the last 90 seconds with our industrial experts just to give us some key, concise statements. Let's start with Armin. What do you expect of this year in terms of changes of the framework?
I mean, 2024 will be hopefully the year of FID, and FIDs require transparency, and this is what we need to work on. Stop dreaming and really bring risks up and risk mitigation measures, and then we can invest.
Christian, your take.
Yeah, the one is simplifying still regulation, and also besides the subsidy, which we thought it's not sufficient, really kind of back guarantees for even venture capital. There's in storage the fund of fund concept, which is put up right now to give those not too risk-averse investors a kind of a better security right now to go into that market, and this would help a lot.
So thank you, Philipp. Thank you, Armin, Christian, Tatiana, and thank you, Markus, for being online with us on this, I think, very broad discussion on different aspects. But that's how we started. FID is actually the pivotal point of all projects, where everything comes together, and I think that's what we have discussed this morning. We have talked about the different areas that are important to take FID, regulatory aspects, of course, in the middle, financial aspects, and technical aspects also briefly. So I think we are pretty well prepared for what lies ahead of us in this conference, but also what lies ahead of us in this thriving, booming hydrogen industry. So thanks for being with us, and give a big hand to our panelists.
Thank you.